MCP enables a layer in the internet where AI agents seamlessly collaborate with any service and even with each other.
What happens when connecting an AI to any app is as easy as plugging in a cable?
What MCP allows you to do is that agent can then go into Outlook, go into Concur, go into your SharePoint, your Google Drive, whatever. Steps. Every single one of those steps can be completed in some form or fashion by an AI today. And even combinations of those. Sometimes we've actually built an MCP where it's a legacy software, where it doesn't have an API. But there's ways that you can actually allow a large language model to access that data from an old ERP system.
Forget about everything else that's out there.
Mhm.
Just work within your internal business processes and build an agentic MCP environment.
Hey, everybody, and welcome. Today, we're asking the question, what happens when connecting an AI to any app is as easy as plugging in a cable? Just months ago, it was a developer's experiment, a model context protocol, now also known as MCP. Now, MCP is backed by every major tech company, unlocking a new era of powerful, interconnected AI agents. So, with MCP standardizing the how of tool connection, does the competitive advantage now shift entirely to the quality and uniqueness of a company's private tools and data, which they can now plug into any AI, particularly in the age of AI slop, which people are talking about, right? When it's so easy to generate generic data, is the uniqueness that you specialize in now a premium? We also used to build complex, brittle chains of tools in systems like N8N, make Zapier, insert your favorite automation tool here. Now MCP handles that connection layer. Does this kill the need for complex workflow automation tools, or does it just move the complexity up a level? If you've tried to get started with N8N and lost a weekend, you might have opinions about that. But anyway, thank you very much. We are live streaming today, July 1st. And this is episode 497. We are Andy Halliday. I am Beth Lyons. We're in this live streaming studio today. We expect Karl will be joining us shortly as our MCP aficionado, and we'll be referencing back a little bit why we're doing the show today, because what's happened between when we did the previous show in March and now in the beginning of July, many things have solidified across the board. So, Andy, you said you had something to orient us a little bit. So why don't
let me give some context without a protocol to MCP. The thing that I believe really happened since March is that pretty much the world said about Anthropic's drop of the protocol itself as a method. The world said yes, and we're going to use that. That's going to be the enabling agreement, the standard that makes all these things work together. First, let me make a distinction between what workflows are and what agents or agentic workflows are. So and this is in the words of Anthropic, who designed and promoted this protocol and this vision for the agentic web. Workflows are systems where LLMs and tools are orchestrated through predefined code paths. And agents, on the other hand, are systems where LLMs dynamically direct their own process and tool usage, maintaining control over how they accomplish tasks. So the question is, how does MCP fit into that vision of what an agent does? And I'm going to share my screen and walk you through something that an agentic LLM, Claude, for the inventors of MCP, put together for us to understand this idea. So let me go through the somewhat slow process of adding a share. And then, Beth, I think you have to launch that as an admin. So what you've got here, let me bring this up a little bit closer to you. First of all, the vision of the agentic web, and I'm going to read from this slide that Claude built for me, and then we're going to walk through the design of the future state of the scalable MCP architecture when it's really running as a well-oiled machine. The vision is that MCP enables a layer in the internet where AI agents seamlessly collaborate with any service and even with each other. And that creates an ecosystem where intelligence can be dynamically composed and scaled by artificial intelligence. So it's similar in some respects to the creation of the www standard way back when the internet was first formed, by creating a standardized communication between browsers and servers that enabled this miracle of the internet where you could do a search and then you would come up with the pages that you could link to using that www HTTP protocol in order to see that information that was delivered by the search engine. Now, I'm going to forecast that when we talk about the scalable MCP architecture, there is a search element that's required that doesn't currently exist, but has to be added in order to get there. So let's walk through this. The scalable MCP architecture it's a story about how generalized MCP clients, not specific MCP clients, will enable dynamic discovery and unlimited service integration. So I'm going to just rewind for a moment and just say that if we just talk about the basic understanding of MCP, MCP is a language that allows LLMs to simply communicate with an MCP server that's been built by a service provider out there on the internet, much as APIs are working today in the World Wide Web. So an API is a service provider stating exactly how an API integration can be built to access data and or services from its servers.
Mhm.
Generalized MCP clients would have the role of a smart assistant going out there and discovering what services are out there that can apply to the task that its user has asked for. So,
Okay. So
any question on that?
yeah, so I know that sometimes we talk about it as like the USB-C cable. So the MCP itself is the connection between the two, right? So what you're talking about is what the instructions could be, and then how it fulfills the instructions by using MCP. Is that true? Uh,
Yes, it's an oversimplification of what MCP implies on the web, to say
100%.
it's like a plugging in a cable, uh, but it does standardize. I mean, a USB-C, if everybody uses USB-C going forward, it's a standard for connection between devices.
Right.
And MCP is a standard for connections between LLMs and all the services out there that aren't LLMs, but it could be LLMs and could also be agents in order
Right.
to have these interactions between them. So
Okay.
what
And I just want to welcome Carl. Hey, Carl. Thanks. Welcome to the show. Andy's given us a little context, an Andy context protocol. And then, yeah, thanks.
All right, so let me walk through this quickly, and then I'm going to turn it over to Carl, who actually uses MCP, which I have yet to use. So um, here's the user making its request, and that is usually done with an AI host. And in this case, we're using Anthropic as the example, and that's Claude. And so a question is asked, what time is it in Tokyo? Schedule a 3 p.m. meeting there. And Anthropic's AI host, Claude, has to do these things in the world of MCP. It has to analyze the task. It then has to go out and discover services that are relevant to that task. and then it has to dynamically route them. And that AI host, when it has access to this reasoning for task analysis, a search capability for service discovery, and dynamic routing of the subtasks that are a part of that, then it becomes an agentic host, an agentic AI. But what's currently missing to some degree, I mean, there are some registries out there that make this a little bit easier, but is this dynamic service discovery. It's a critical infrastructure challenge because eventually there will be millions of MCP servers out there, some of them generalized, some of them much more specific to a very narrow task. And the AI host, Claude, needs to be able to look over all of those and surface immediately the ones that are most relevant to the task you gave it. Then it has to read the capabilities of the MCP protocol and select and route the collection of servers it's going to use to do those tasks. Now, right now, there are some things like the Anthropic MCP Hub that collect a certain number of MCP clients, but certainly not millions of them, the millions that will emerge in this process. And then there are third-party registries, just like and by the way, this is analogous to search indexes that are created by crawlers out there, these spiders on the web that go about and collect every single web page that's out there. Google really took uh, took the whole world by storm by being the fastest and best at understanding what was out there in the world and then giving you a search index against those. And so that's a piece that search piece for all these millions of MCP servers out there is in the making at the moment. So we don't quite have that in full form. So a generalized MCP client that's a part of the sort of AI host isn't quite there yet. So what do those generalized host MCP clients look like? Well, they'll probably break into 5 or 6 different standardized types. One will be to replace the APIs and in order for MCP to replace the APIs that exist out there on websites that provide services and or data. There's going to be a generic HTTP client that discovers all the servers out there, the new MCP servers that fulfill the same roles that API interfaces did. Then there'll be another one that is specialized to do interactions with databases. And there'll also be one that's specifically going to access API gateways so that people don't even have to have an MCP server out there. If they have published an API, then there'll be a client that specializes in doing that. And then the magic happens. The AI host communicates through the MCP protocol in very standardized commands and structured responses without failing because of the difficulty of programming an API with exactly the right code lines that are necessary to interact with it effectively. This protocol then already having identified which servers down here at the bottom of this display are the ones that are needed, it does that communication, brings back the data and the services, and then composes your response. Now, here are just some examples for that case example that we used, which is what time is it in Tokyo? There'll be a world clock server out there. If in order to put the right time on my calendar, there'll be a Google Calendar server, which is an MCP server. There's a banking server if I want to pay for something, and the shopping server. And those are just 4 simple examples of what MCP servers published by service providers are, and there will be millions of them out there. Okay, that's my intro.
I bet you're on.
Right. I'm asking you to make sure that we can hear you, Karl, and we can. So yay. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks for the intro, Andy. I think I think before we get into MCP, I really want to play this little clip from Matthew Berman speaking to Satya Nadella about really the agentic web and where MCP falls into it. And I think this is a very important piece because with the adoption of MCP by all the major AI labs and recognizing it as that important piece, I think it sets everything up, or kind of potentially a gateway to how Satya is describing the agentic web. So yeah, I'm just gonna play you a little clip of that, and then that goes into what essentially what I've been doing with clients now with MCP. Do
for complex business process, right? That seems to be here and now, right? I mean, it's kind of clear as day that when you go about thinking about business process and business applications, you have to compose yourself into something like that. And so, yeah, that will mean pretty radical change if all you thought was, hey, I'm the system of record or system of engagement or what have you, and it's just about workflows on top of my data, and that's the scope. That's just not going to persist. So I think we have to all be open to participating in what is this new orchestration layer in the agentic web that will be essentially, will have multiple backends, right? Your SaaS application will be one backend. You better support something like MCP in order to be able to participate in the agentic web. And then maybe even something like NL Web could even reduce the friction of all these connectors, right? Because if you think about enterprises, you have a significant sort of friction in how connectors work. Something like NL Web could be massive change even inside the enterprise. And so I feel like, yes, I think SaaS applications we built may have to radically change in order to adapt themselves for this future.
Yeah, and so let's just say these SaaS companies, do you think they're going to be curators of this ground truth data for their customers, and then the agents will be provided by platform companies like Microsoft?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of think about, like, it's unclear to me exactly how it all shakes out, because in some sense, all of us overstate the importance of one thing that we have today. But the reality is, when these platform shifts, the value will anyway get created somewhere else, right? So this is where, like at the end of the day, what's the job to be done? The job to be done is to complete a business process. It's not about any one system of record and its curation. Or it's not about any one agent or one workflow. It's about the entirety of it, right? So that, to me, is where the water is flowing. And the question is, how do you flow with it versus thinking that somehow I have this moat and I'm going to hold on to it, or I'm going to build some sort of facade around it, which has an agent head or what have you, but it's not the comprehensive view of what the customer in this case needs to, get done.
Yeah, I really like that.
Okay, so the reason why I shared that is, if you kind of gather what Satya was talking about and a little bit of context, they're talking about what is the role of SaaS in this new agentic web. And you probably, for those on the show, obviously most likely heard of Agentforce, right? So Salesforce's Agentforce, and Benioff was actually interviewed by Emily Chang recently. And he was talking about 30, 50, I think 30 to 50%, something about agents being, doing the work in Salesforce. Now, when we talk about agentic web, I'll give you a simple example. This is an example I use with all our clients describing this. So you are an executive or a leader, and you want to say to your agent, hey, I want to book a Q3 leadership meeting in, I don't know, Portland, Oregon, on these in Q3 sometime, and I want to talk about our budget, and I want to, in relation to our budget previously and how we're going to plan our budget over the next, for Q4 and eventually for next year. So here's the steps that your agent would go through. So your agent would then go into your Outlook or your workspace and find the dates in Q3 that work for most people. And then it'll essentially send those invites. Then it'll go to a travel system like a Concur, book your flights, book your travel, book your hotel. Then it goes back into your OneDrive, your SharePoint, whatever. Then it extracts the information from whatever file, puts together a PowerPoint, whatever deck, puts together an agenda, and then a week before the actual meeting sends a reminder to everybody. if you think about all those steps, every single one of those steps can be completed in some form or fashion by an AI today. And even combinations of those. But what we're looking for is the agent goes in and does that entire piece, either at the level you designate complete autonomy, or hey, check in every single time you're about to complete a task, whatever the level of autonomy you provide it. So, and what MCP allows you to do is that agent can then go into Outlook, go into Concur, go into your SharePoint, your Google Drive, whatever, go into your whatever your presentation, your deck, slides, um, PowerPoint, whatever, Keynote, even, and then also go into your Word, then go back into your Outlook. So all these different applications has that MCP where it's your agent deciding what it's to do. So the agent was given a goal, and it went out and completed that and created all these tasks for it. So, and that's why I hate the booking travel example, because it's like that there's a better example out there that's more like not personalized. Like, this thing happens on a regular basis. Think about all the manual steps every single person has to go through. So when you have an MCP, that's essentially what it means. So now what I want to do, okay, so before we get there, there's one fun analogy I also share with clients, and to me this made the most sense. An MCP, whatever you taught, like, think about if you're a company and you are shipping something, I don't know, whatever you're shipping. And then there's a lot of companies, Purelator, DHL, Federal Express, right? In Canada, Canada Post, whatever you choose. And each of those shipping companies has its own form. And you fill out that form deciding how you want to ship it, air, land, or sea. And each of those companies have a different form. Well, with an MCP, each of those companies have the same form. And it's not you who's deciding air, land, or sea. It's your agent deciding, because hey, I need to ship this to somewhere. And it goes out and finds whichever company and then uses the form, which is standardized across. And then it decides, right? So I want to actually share like a very simple example of um like an MCP in use. So let's see, entire screen here. No, yeah, should that. Okay,
Inception coming soon. There we go.
so here's an example that I kind of, yes, that one. Okay, let's run with this. Okay, so
So you're in Claude.
I'm in Claude, and just before we get into I guess, yeah. So in my MCP for Claude, so my Claude is the client, right? And in my particular case of MCP, I have a couple things here that I put in: Firecrawl, Analytics 4. I have Docker, but I disabled it, and then Zapier. Zapier has their MCP, which connects to all their applications. And then, yeah, and then in my Zapier, what I have connected is my Outlook and my Slack, and then IG. So a simple example would be like, the stuff that drives people crazy is every month or every quarter you have to do some stupid report, whatever that report is. Quarterly report, annual report, weekly report, doesn't matter. Most of the time you have to go into these systems, right? Tableau, Power BI, HubSpot, Salesforce, whatever, Oracle, whatever system you have to generate reports for whatever department you have to go into those systems, and more likely than not, amalgamate something together to put it all together, right?
Mhm.
So what this does, and this is the easiest thing we built for clients, is like, hey, go to an MC, like, we'll take Claude, because OpenAI, ChatGPT is not quite there yet. but eventually you will. I guess we'll show you what. You're just like, hey,
Claude did invent it. So,
yeah. But with the majority of people on ChatGPT, it's an inevitability,
yeah.
right? So essentially, I'm like, hey, give me a report, Google Analytics for last month. Figure out the top. I'm like, you figure it out. Then create a summary with key points. Cool. Then create an interactive presentation on it. Then I want you to draft an email and summary to this person and also send it to my Slack, right? So a lot of the times, some of this stuff has to be done by some sort of automation tool, Zapier, N8N, whatever. And you actually still have to go to analytics, or you build out an automation that pulls that data from there, right? You have to build that out. But now I don't, because now I connect really MCP. I don't know what happened here. Oh, I'm running another MCP and it timed out. But I can just ask my essentially Claude to go into my analytics, do the reporting for me. And what with other clients you do, it's like, hey, connect your HubSpot, connect your Salesforce, connect your Oracle, connect whatever system you have, and then have the AI go in there and do the analysis for you and then pull out the report. Very simple example. Obviously, you could build a really complex prompt where you put examples of what you want it to do, and then you get sent by email, you get sent by whatever, and then away it goes. So I think like if you now start thinking about what you can do with this,
Mhm.
for us, it's you enable your clients to be like, hey, the report you hate doing every month, and we can either build an automation for you. You know what you could do? You pretty much just ask via MCP, via like the Claude desktop app, to just go in there and go get it for you. And then do whatever you want with it.
And it
So-
looks to me like you're not even adding, right? At Google Analytics, at blah, blah,
Nope.
blah.
I'm
at
just telling
Slack.
it to go to.
Right.
So there's a couple things that you have to start thinking about too. So let's say like you're an agency and you have multiple clients. Well, then your naming convention has to be really, really good, because then you get specific. I want you to access this.
Right.
And then it'll go to that MCP, right? That MCP server for that. So that's what you're trying to make it do. And so, yeah, every single time you do something like this for clients, it's like, it is one of the most, like the awe moments. They're like, what? I can actually go and it's like, here, I'll connect this. Now, I make it sound easy, but it's a pain in the ass sometimes, because it's such a new thing.
Yeah.
That you have to find the MCPs that work. And you're kind of taking a risk, because you're like, I have no clue. You're just like, okay, which is one? Like, you go to GitHub, like, this one looks good. You like, it's so new that there isn't like an actual like legit repository. There's some, but there's the more niche it gets. What's really neat about this too is a couple times we've actually built an MCP where it's a legacy software, where it doesn't have an API. But there's ways that you can actually allow a large language model to access that data from an old ERP system. That's what makes this really exciting, because there's like, for the longest time, one of the blocks that we've always had is like, crap, this company is using the oldest thing we've ever seen, and it's such a niche software. Like, no one would know about it unless you work for that industry or for that subsection of that industry, and it's super unique. But now you can start allowing, and the thing is, most people
Wait, Carl, stop for a
Yeah.
second there. Are you saying that on an old legacy system that's accessible via the browser, you would have an agentic browser that would interact with that in order to
No, we build the MCP, we
Yep.
build a protocol, it wrapped it, and you can access like things. Yeah, you can it depends still, but we've been able to do it a couple times already. For systems that you're like, I've never heard of this ever before. Now Claude can access this. I'm like, yeah, let's try it out.
Doesn't that mean that it has to at least have an API to that back end?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't need.
So it's a local piece of code that's going to surface the data from the legacy system,
Yeah.
and you have an MCP server on the network that is gonna express that
Yes.
extract.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, and you've actually built one of those.
Yeah. A couple times already. Yeah. So it's exciting because it's like, wait a minute. And I didn't know how to do it. I'm just asking O3, hey, this is the software, research it. This is what we have. How do I build an MCP for it? It's like, oh, well, you do this, make sure you have this. You have the appropriate, what do they call it? Because I've done it for bid to win and then another software. I have to find my clip of where I was doing that because, oh yeah, building MCP connectors. So what we're trying to do is simple steps is what kind of capabilities do you want to map out? The easiest one, and I guess the most one that most people would understand in API language, be read. Because most people, you want your large language to go in and read. The right part, quote unquote, is a little bit different. So it's like fetch quote, create work order, something like that. And then if it doesn't have an API, does it have a CLI? Does it have a DB tables, even log files? Because then you're trying to call that through like a microservice. And then essentially what we're doing is we're trying to spin up an MCP server using like some sort of SDK and see if we can get I think it says stub methods that call the niche app and marshal results into JSON. So, and then I would essentially go step by step using whatever software. And then all I'm trying to do is essentially have an AI to go in there. That's like my first row. Because if I get it to analyze, then I'm like, okay, now I can probably get it to do the thing that that person was trying to do. Does it always work? No. But I think like as the protocol gets updated, there's more opportunities there. Granted, there's some.
Let me add that, over time, companies that have legacy software and want to keep their customers, instead of having them replaced by some new AI native startup that's gonna provide the same functionality, they'll want to build an MCP server that is available, that interacts with their legacy software. But kudos to 0 to 60 AI, because you guys are shortcutting that emerging, development by being able to write MCP servers against any of your clients' legacy software, even if it doesn't have an API. I applaud you on that. That's a really great service in this period of time.
I do think though, we're kind of, it's a loophole that may not be required going forward. It's just something that you can do now. I do think like what Satya was saying, and this is where I think his vision and Benioff's vision really compete, is your SaaS company cannot be you can't have your own agent. Sana can't have its own agent. Like it can and it can't, because it makes no sense. Because if my agent wants to go, one system will never ever have everything that you need. You'll have to have your tech stack, right? But if your tech stack prevents an agent from accessing it, and I think this is the big question is, will an Asana, will Salesforce, and I've seen MCPs, they say they're MCPs, but I'm not sure. I haven't looked through. Will they allow, like, let's say an OpenAI agent that's run through me to access everything, to allow an OpenAI agent as like my proxy to do whatever I need to do? And that's to me the big question of all of this, because other clients who have Microsoft Copilot 365, they quote unquote have MCPs, but it's like, wait a minute, there's only like 6, 7 of them. So it's not like, and you have to go to Power App and Power Automate to build the MCP server. And how many companies would even remotely think about doing that. So it's like, I'm like, where is this gonna go? Because it's kind of wild, wild west. And essentially, people who are doing this, you're kind of having to find the MCP server essentially through your ChatGPT search or through Google. You're like, Google Ads MCP. Right? You're like,
Well,
okay, there's 7 of them. Which one do I use? And which ones work? Which ones don't? You just gotta have to test it out.
and to a certain extent, this is the building model or the business model of the companies, right?
Yeah.
You store your data with us. We then give you tools in which to access and analyze your data.
Yeah.
So by making it completely open, that they need a different they need a different business model.
Business model. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole point
And
here.
there I get one. That business model will be you'll be you'll be charged for the number of bytes of data that you extract from their system rather than
Right.
paying a subscription,
Yeah.
to get that'll be the end of it. But I just want to point out that it is early on, and the reason not every company is doing the lifting of creating an MCP server to make their data and or their services accessible is in part your point, Beth, which is wait, that changes my business. How am I going to charge for that? And also there aren't that many agents out there yet.
No.
There's only a very few out there. And, 0 to 60 has a couple of them working, using Claude, for example, or many. I don't know how many you've got going. And then you've got GenSpark and, Skywork and others out there that are agentic, but they haven't yet found a generalized MCP client model that can access any of those out there. And as I pointed out at the beginning of the show, there isn't yet a registry that says, here's all the MCP servers that are available. You can publish. If you built an MCP server as a company, you can publish to that registry, and that will make it accessible to agents in general. But that's what's going to emerge over the course of the next couple of years is you'll have that registry, you'll have these published MCP servers, and there will be generalized clients that are built into AI from Anthropic, AI from OpenAI, AI from Google that will be able to hoover up everything that's out there and decide in milliseconds which ones to exploit in order to deliver on the promise of a beautiful and sort of omnipotent agent in your hands.
So
It's interesting, Andy, because right now, for any business, you buy your tech stack and you have licenses for essentially all these people to access and do whatever, right? So, like people who use Asana, you have project managers assigning projects and tasks and so on. So, with this in place, it's then you're not, you can eventually see a point where, like, yeah, you could go into Asana, but you know what's better is that my agent would do this for me and be like, hey, I need essentially, I need to keep track of this project. Can you develop a project brief with timelines, blah, 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 blah. And then based on that usage, you'll see this thing pop up, maybe your email, maybe it's purely on ChatGPT where your data connector to Asana is now like just showing you the task. And instead of you going to Asana, going to any of these things, your one interface is whichever large language model or whatever that you decide that you like. And then those agents are doing the work for you. So just like I showed in terms of Google Analytics, you're just like, hey, what's the project update for whatever? And then it's pulling the data from multiple sources. So you're kind of blurring the lines of no source. You're just paying for all the data that all these sources are, which is a completely brand new business model.
I'm really excited about the example that you gave because it makes a bit of a distinction between the agentic web, where there's millions of MCP servers out there and the AI intelligence is immediately discovering them through some registry, and instead focuses on the early opportunity to use this protocol and the intelligence of agents within the domain of the enterprise. So within the company, just your stack, forget about everything else that's out there.
Mhm.
Just work within your internal business processes and build an agentic MCP environment that allows intelligence in the form of the model that you've selected. We're either using Claude or we're using OpenAI, et cetera. But we've built the necessary connections to our systems
Right.
using MCP, and now we just talk to the agent. And that really becomes this extra teammate in the imaginary but emerging future where I can have a really profoundly proficient teammate, which is an intelligent AI that can access all of the company's information with permissions. Why? Because it's not exposed as an MCP server in the registry. It's only inside the company. And now, there's millions of clients out there, and I don't mean MCP clients, I mean customer businesses, the kind that you're pursuing in your business that can implement that through you by having somebody who understands the code of MCP well enough that they can build those connectors directly to their systems, whether they have APIs or not.
And that's one of the things that AI, it was like the early promise of AI. So if we could use this pattern recognition system to be able to see, so let's say we're as a company, we're taking advantage of our top three profit centers, right? They're really obvious to us. We're doing those. And then we don't have time to go and just look at a bunch of other things, but let's have the next 7 surfaced for us. Not only let's have the next 7 surfaced for us, let's have it prototyped. Let's run it through some data and see what that might be. What are the probabilities there? Let's have all of that done and then put into a presentation. And now what you're bringing to your boss is more than, "Hey, I have an idea for this.
Yeah.
Can I have some resources?"
Yeah.
But, "Hey, I have an idea for this. I worked out the resources. I did all of this. This looks like it has a probability of, I don't know, 70% that it could add 10% to our bottom line," or whatever that kind of thing is. It sounds actually a little like what we talked about in terms of being able to run the combinations for antibiotics or like protein folding, those kinds of things. This lets you do that within your data and your organization with your own probabilities.
Yeah, which is really hard right now, right? Because like even if you have Google Workspace or Microsoft Copilot, you still have to essentially build this
Right.
whole thing out, right? You have to build the Copilot agent and connect it to a SharePoint or multiple SharePoints, and like the only thing it can do right now is data retrieval and maybe some advising, right? But the whole point of this is like if you give it the tooling to actually do certain things. So it's like the whole like in my Copilot agent in my, like say like whatever company you are in, but you're in Microsoft Shop. With Copilot, technically you should be like, hey, yeah, I need you to write a report. Then I want you to do this. Then I want you to do this. Then go to my like it should theoretically then be able to do that. And then I know we have one another thing here. Is it A to A? Agent to
Yeah.
agent? I think Microsoft came up with something else. I think Satya was talking about it. I never paid attention to it. But it's like, how do my agent, which has a very specific task, talk to another agent to either help me complete that task or give some sort of other instructions, because that's essentially the point, right? You want an agent overseeing another agent or working with other agents. So it's like because then that opens the door to like all these agents working together to complete whatever task that's happening.
Yeah,
Which
Mhm.
the A2A idea, agent to agent, part of this picture of this agentic web stack is interesting to me. I asked myself the question, when would you need something more than an MCP server to make your things accessible to an agent out there that's in one of the AI hosts like Claude? And an example might be Salesforce might use an LLM intelligence to serve as an intermediary to its MCPs. It develops multiple MCPs, and its agent, instead of having the individual MCPs have to be discovered and registered, instead it would put an agent in between. So any agent
Right.
approaching Salesforce would just talk to an agent that understands all of its MCPs and understands the permissions and which ones they really want to expose and which ones you have to be a special customer for and
Yeah.
Right.
authenticate as the agent. So now you get a picture of here's these generalized MCP clients that are built by Anthropic and OpenAI and Google and Meta, whoever. But then you also have agents that are out there that need to talk to agents for the MCP providers that have complex services like Salesforce, let's say. And so you won't talk directly to the MCP's servers at Salesforce. You'll talk to the agent who's the gatekeeper for all of the things that Salesforce, dynamically expresses as available to customers.
And you'll still have Salesforce professionals, certified Microsoft people who understand the context of this. But one of the things that I want to surface here is just that we are getting above the what we have been, but we are getting above the place where a general human or even a highly trained human can understand at a glance what the AI is reading. Right? So in Salesforce, your data, where your data is, how it's connected to other data is in the schema, right? So you can pull it up, you can like see which tables are part of which thing. That is something that an AI can identify immediately, right? Like the AI sees it and comprehends it all as a thing, right? It sees it visually, it organizes it, does that immediately. Even really, really experienced, or shall we say, on the spectrum, AI, certified Salesforce people do take slightly longer to recognize everything that's
Not
in that
just
schema,
slightly. If you
right?
try to read through a database
I mean,
schema in there.
even
Yeah.
the best. And so we are moving to a place where trust is incredibly important. And you have to trust that the data that you're being given as the interpretation of what it could see is accurate because
And
there's so much built on that.
well, yeah, I think you still need to. I think uh, going forward, we'll still need to see the sources. Like,
Yes.
where did your? We cannot just trust the agent. Oh, I pulled all this and I got it from Salesforce's agent. You're like, okay, that means nothing. I want to actually see where did the Salesforce agent get this data from, and like to your point, Andy, do we now trust the Salesforce agent that's interacting with our agent? Is there enough trust there to say everything that it's providing? Like, could it be that our agent talks to the Salesforce agent and the Salesforce agent essentially gets that information and gives it to our agent? And then,
That's one
right.
model that we don't know what will be the final solution. It may be just that the agent is smart enough to know that here I'm going to spit to you, agent, one.
Yeah.
I'm going to spit to you the MCP server addresses of the ones that you need to
Yeah.
access. So it's
So
an advisor. It's an advisor to the other agent.
and this I didn't see, Benioff's latest stuff, so I'm not sure if he is talking to this, but as someone who, drank the Salesforce Kool-Aid for a long time, um, the, Salesforce built its service on trust, right? You can trust the layer that is between your data and everybody else, right?
Mhm.
So it's in the cloud, it's accessible by everyone, but we have built this thing that is our trust guarantee. But now we need to trust you, not just that it's not accessible to anybody else, but that what you are delivering to us, right? Like, it's no longer we've got it locked in and you can access it. Now we've got it locked in, you can access it, and we're giving it to you in ways that are trustworthy, right? It's a slightly different trust layer thing, I think. Um, we had a bunch of questions. Lawrence was asking, how many MCP servers do you need? File search, GitHub, Exa. Like, are you thinking that he's saying maybe 10 max? They're also saying a full bare metal custom build is what I've realized I need to do.
So here's the wild card to me out of all of this is so I saw somebody in the um I forgot, I think he owns a trash company, and I put this out because but I wasn't sure if it's 100% legit. Somebody he said, "Hey, I built my own CRM, not to sell, just for our company. I don't intend to sell it. I don't, but it only works for us." I'm like, "Okay." So I was wondering, we're all talking about how if all these current SaaS companies are going to be still around,
Mhm.
but another question that I got in my head is like, what happens if companies are able to build, not to sell, just for their specific use, all the software that's already out there? Like,
Mhm.
it's not like I know there was a one post by like a friend of ours, like Danielle Lafleur, I think, and she was talking about how like and the sentiment's the same. You can't really just use vibe coding to build, scale it to your TAM. I'm like, no, I don't think that's kind of the way to go because, a lot of people don't really want to become a software company. What they want to do is solve their problem inside their company. So if they can just code, they can build something that just solves their problems and with no intention of selling it. That's very different because then you don't have all the complications of trying to market it to a mass audience when all you need to do is just maybe to 4 or 5 people, "Hey, does it work the way I want it to?" "Yeah, okay, sounds good."
Right.
And that's it, right?
So you don't need a full PowerPoint clone. You just need something that has 5 slide templates,
Correct, and that's
right?
it. Yes,
And you just put your stuff
that's
on it.
all I need. So that that going down that route, that disrupts the market at just as much as a vertical agent of whatever software. It's like, no, what if you allow and we were talking about another person with this yesterday. It's like, wouldn't that lead to kind of like a Spotify for random software templates? You're like, hey, I just want that, that, that. Here's some criteria, and I'm gonna grab that and essentially quote unquote vibe code it to completion to fit me.
Mhm.
And I'm not paying a service. I may be paying the new Spotify of software to just access these things, which have MCP built within it already, which then are my agent can access anything. And that there's a standard across there. So that is a whole new potential new world if that person that I saw is actually legit built it that way. 'Cause that's like, wow, that dynamic actually makes more sense than everyone trying to become their own SaaS company. It was like, "No, what if I just wanted to solve my little, like, trash business company that I don't
Right.
need 50,000 contact names, I just need maybe 5,000?"
Right. Because because it used to be to get the solution, you had to be able to work at a scale that it justified the cost of creating the solution. But that price has come down.
Yeah, yeah. So, ye I don't know, like, if I can build my own whatever app just super, super focused to what I want, because that's
Mhm.
always the complaint, right? Every single time you go into any company, they complain about their own tool because they can't do XXX, whatever the thing that they can't do. And everyone whenever there's a new employee come in, they're again, I've never heard anyone happy with their website. Every single company always like, "My website sucks." Why? I just rebranded, but it still sucks. Like, every single time, it doesn't do this, doesn't do this. Well, like, what if now you can just make it do what you want it to do, and that's it? And you're not there trying to sell it. You're just like, "I just making this do what I'm supposed to do." That is a big if I was like a Salesforce or whatever CRM, like, or CMS, like, that is a now like, "Uh-oh, wait a second, like, how well, that is a different business model." And maybe you could take advantage of that. Again, going where the puck is going rather than doing it now.
So,
Okay.
Ian,
Unfortunately, I have to dash.
okay.
So I'm going to bail, but I'm going to leave it up to you guys to wrap this show. And thank you so much, Carl, for your ice breaking at the cutting edge of MCP implementation. It's
Yeah,
really cool.
thanks.
All right. See you
Uh,
guys.
awesome. So this seems like a good time to wrap up as well. What are you thinking is if so somebody's just watched this video, what are the things that you think they should do next? Like what is the next piece from this?
Oh, yeah, just learn a little bit about, like, MCP, even if it's actually easy to install an MCP into, let's say, a Claude desktop. I'd actually start there rather than now if you want really, really simple, like, ChatGPT has their data connectors, but I think they're more guarded. They won't just allow you to just add whatever MCP and have, you know, ChatGPT do whatever, but Claude seems to allow you to do that. So go to Claude. You know, I think the easiest one is if you have a Zapier account, their MCP is super easy to play with, to connect. Just learn how to do that. And then, the next step would be, copying like Firecrawl or something that you normally use. Then you'd have to do a little bit of code, more like copy and paste, and just use your favorite large language model to kind of learn about it. But I do think it's important to think about it at least because what Satya was saying in the agentic web, even if you just hold off, you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna wait. It's important to know that there will be something it that allows an agent or your chat GPT to go into different applications and essentially do the stuff that you wanted to do that you would normally do. Your AI could probably do it better and combine it with more things.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, if you were inspired watching this show, we would love to hear from you. Join our community and let us know or make comments on the video. Interaction is always awesome. Our community is at dailyaishowcommunity.com. We also have a newsletter. And we will say up front, our website does suck, Carl. Thanks so much. We've been vibe coding a new version. But if you want to go to our website, subscribe to our newsletter. It's thedailyAIshow.com, and we have faith that it will improve. Tomorrow we have our news show. Thursday we have a surprise show because that has not been programmed yet. And Friday is our 500th episode. We are having a party and we want to invite you to party with us. Thanks everybody who is in our chat. And I think that's a wrap. Cool. Thanks everybody. See you tomorrow. Hope you have a good day. Oh, happy Canada Day to all Canadians, including Carl. Don't get drunk on maple syrup.
Aloha.